There's a new director.
Microphone's on.
I don't have an agenda. There's no.
Then I'm sitting next to John.
Going to call to order the Town of St. John Plan Commission study agenda for 8/15/2023. Roll call, please.
Robert Burleson,
Here.
Yolanda Cardona,
Here.
Joe Gomez-Daigle,
Here.
Bob Valoy,
Here.
Jenna Lordson,
Here.
John Kennedy,
Here.
Attorney Adam Decker,
Here.
Engineer John Dykstra,
Here.
Councilman Liaison Brian Blazak,
Present.
Town Manager Joe Wizawati.
All right, we have a quorum. Before we begin old and new business, I unfortunately have the dubious honor to announce that Sergio will be leaving us next week, our planner, on to greener, better pastures, to continuing his career elsewhere. That's why there's a change in how we're sitting today. So, but Sergio, in all honesty, it's been an honor. The professionalism you brought, the advice you've given, and the leadership you brought to that department, the staff you brought in, it's going to be big shoes to fill. And I wish you well on your next endeavor. So, unfortunately, we will miss you, but wish you well. Wish you well. If anybody else has anything to say, because I know we'll say those other things afterwards when we're not being recorded. So, all right. Next on the agenda, we have item A. This is a proposed amendment to site plan, request for waiver of sidewalk along Parish Avenue at 10845 Popular Place, St. John, Indiana. And in front of us, we got Mr. Brandt. Hello there, sir.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight. And I'm up here tonight to talk about the 8-foot sidewalk that was required to be put in along Parish Avenue in front of the retail center that we're developing. And the issue is that where the drainage easement is, I can't put an 8-foot sidewalk in. My engineer said we can definitely get a 5-foot sidewalk up and down the Parish Avenue. And that's what I'm requesting tonight, to see if we can reduce the sidewalk size from 8 feet to 5 feet.
All right, so for non-engineers in the room, so you have enough room for 5. If you would take it to 8, what would that require you to do?
I would have to go into the swale that's along Parish Avenue, and the sidewalk would not be level. I mean, it's just, from what my engineer said, the 8-foot is just too wide to put in there without reconstructing that whole swale or reducing the swale or it's just very difficult to put an 8-foot wide sidewalk there.
John, have you looked at this?
I only saw the photos that were sent today, and looking at the plan, I don't really have an opinion other than that if his engineer is saying that, I'm sure from an engineering perspective, grading is grading to fit something in, and you can see a swale there. We probably would not want to impact the carrying or flowability of the swale by reducing it at all, not knowing any of the flow patterns out there.
Would you be able to spend some time between now and our next meeting just to, not that I don't doubt his engineers, but just to, for our opinion from you
sure.
to say, yes, we agree with their engineer and the impact it would have? Because, I mean, if it is a hardship and we don't want to impact that swale, then we don't want to impact that
Okay.
swale. But if there is a way to work to get this 8-foot sidewalk.
Yeah, we can look at that.
Okay.
Sure.
I guess my question, can the swale be moved closer to the road? That'd be,
I don't, from what my engineer said, no. And I would be glad to provide the town with any documentation you need from Tring Engineering for you to evaluate this request.
Yeah, I would say, I saw what Mr. Tarango wrote in the email. I would prefer that they provide a plan. It
Okay.
doesn't, it can be a sketch plan, just showing what he was referencing in the email and what that would look like. Maybe a cross-section
Sure.
showing why this will be a problem.
I would be glad to provide
Okay.
that for the town for review. Okay, that's,
Mr. Brand, if you can do that, then.
I would be glad to have Mr. Turinga prepare something for you to review. Hopefully, I can get it done by Friday.
Okay, great.
So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can-
I know Don, so, yeah, we can always discuss it too, so,
Okay,
okay, thank you.
that's my main concern here tonight.
Any other questions, comments? So we're not talking eliminating, we're just talking
No, I'm not
reduction.
eliminating, we're putting, and I think the sidewalks are good for public safety for today, and maybe down the future, there'll be more sidewalks down Parish Avenue, and that, the sidewalk's not the issue, it's just the size and how do we make it work regarding where the swale is in the road easement and all those issues.
All right. Hearing no other questions, comments? All right.
Thank
You
you,
can provide that information to our engineer, and then
I would be glad
see
to.
you a couple weeks.
Thank you very much, have a nice evening.
Next on the agenda, we have the Gate to St. John, Unit 21B. This is proposed final plat of the Gate to St. John, Unit 21B, 25 single-family residential lots, part of the original 108 acres. And Mr. Kill, good evening, sir.
Good evening, everybody. The first item is 21B. We did receive the review comments from John over here. So 21B didn't seem to be, just didn't seem to be that bad. I mean, just, they're very minor things. They're actually working on this now, so, John, I don't really have any, I don't have any issues with what John has proposed or the proposed changes to the plat, so.
Yeah, I would agree. I looked at the comments, they did come from my surveyor, and they were relatively minor.
Such as?
Darkness of lines and so forth to make existing easements look like existing rather than proposed and so forth.
Okay.
Couple notes.
Just very minor stuff, so we're in the process of correcting that, or actually changing it, so.
Okay. Any other questions regarding this? And then before the meeting, I'll need that, make sure John has all the documentation he needs to get us an opinion, a satisfactory letter. Awesome. Any other questions? Comments? All right, next on the agenda, we have Gates of St. John, Unit 24B, proposed final plat for units 24, which is 47 single-family residential lots located east of Klein. Mr. Kill.
Yeah, this is, I guess there was a lot of similar comments here. I guess the only one that, I don't know if I need to discuss with the planning commissioner or maybe with Randall, I mean, he brought up the, how the easement exists for the well. It's per item, so, I think Randall was mainly asking the question.
He was asking the question.
I think he was just asking a question. I mean, every well we have is adjacent to a street, so you simply can't get away from that. That's just how it is. You have to have access to your treatment plants, your wells, so I think he was just asking a question.
Yeah, I think he was. And I didn't have enough background on that type of thing to really, okay, well, maybe have the two surveyors discuss it, or town, I did have Adam in on it just in case there was something. But if it was done like that with other, I know there was, how many wells? There was at least one other I had seen.
Well, I think there's 9 wells in town now, or 8, something like that. Bob would know.
Well, I mean, in your development.
Well, there's well 8 and there's well 9, and then
Okay,
if you go back to the original Gates by the water tower, there's 2 wells there as well.
okay.
Well is, well,
6 and 7. Well,
6 and 7.
it sounded weird, but.
Yeah, so
Yes.
I think it can be worked out. I just couldn't give an answer. I thought it was best that the surveyors discuss it and maybe the town input, but, and maybe the answer is, well, this is exactly how we did it in other situations, and maybe that answers the question.
Well, and the reason the easement is called out the way it is for item.
Yeah.
We did check with them before we did this.
Okay,
So just for your benefit, John, because you weren't here, so.
Right.
We did look into that, and Bob will tell you.
Yeah.
That's why it exists the way it does, so.
So I would say, in the response to that, those questions explain that, and I think that will satisfy it, so.
Yeah, I may go ahead and just respond to that, and then I'll go ahead and let the surveyor or the engineer respond to the rest of them then
Okay,
for you.
okay, great.
If that would be okay.
I think that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sergio, one of the questions I believe on this 24B was how the lot for the well was going to be recorded. Have we determined that, or
We
is it?
have, we will engage Robinson Engineering to create a one-lot subdivision to create a lot of record with an address for that site.
And if it's a town-owned, will there be an easement on that needed for the well, or no? Is this the easement for the well lot that we were just talking for IDEM?
Easement is for the well, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
Well, the lot itself, John, won't be an easement, it'll be town-owned property. The only conservation easements exist in the backyards there, and then you'll notice that some of it goes in the public right-of-way, but that's a town public right-of-way, so
It doesn't.
it's owned by the town anyway, so
okay.
that should take care of it then.
IDEM calls for a 150-foot radius around the well.
Gotcha. So lots 24, 38, and 24, that's why that dark hatch area is there?
Yeah, I think I'm remembering one of Randall's comments was to define the arc curvature on those lots, so they're clearly aware of what that easement is in their rear yard, and
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We have no issue with that, yes.
So no sheds, no nothing on those lots,
There is nothing allowed in that easement,
circle,
There
gotcha.
goes-
that arc, I should say.
Gotcha. All right, am I missing anything? Any questions, comments? Same comments, make sure he gets all the information he needs from his review so we can get a letter from Robinson Engineering.
Will do.
Awesome, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, CLD Holdings. This is a proposed site plan of a drive-in restaurant at 9525 Wicker Avenue, St. John. This is 572 feet south of Wicker Avenue and Joliet Street intersection. And we have, hello there.
Hi,
If you can state your name and organization for the record, please.
my name is James Huss with DVG Team, and this is CLD Holdings, Corey Dedamore, who is our client.
Nice.
We were here last month, so a lot of this will sound familiar to the commission, but we're here to inform the commission of our intent to develop the property at 9525 Wicker Avenue. Proposed use will be a Chipotle restaurant. And we went through where the site located, but it is bounded on the north by the American Legion and J&M Golf Shop to the south. Site is orientated directly across from 95th Avenue for any future coordination if a signal goes there in the future. The site is just under 1 acre, Zone C2, and in the US 41 Overlay District. Adjacent zoning is C2, north and south, C1 across the street, and C2 to the rear and east, but it's currently of residential usage. The proposed plan is compliant for parking count, although we will be requesting a variance for parking in the front of the building. The drive-through lane can stack 7 vehicles with capacity of 100% more around the building. We're proposing a trash enclosure in the rear as far out of sight from US 41 as possible. We have, since the last meeting, developed a comprehensive landscaping plan that will require some variances, but we will be submitting that with our full design package. We're proposing signage, 2 on-building signs and a single modest monument sign. And we'll be detaining stormwater beneath the parking lot or the grass area to the furthest rear/east of the property. If you could scroll to the building renderings, please. We have some renderings prepared of what the site will look like for your viewing. And this project will be presenting to the BZA on Monday next week for identified variances and a special exception for the drive-through lane, although I would stress again that a Chipotle lane is very, very different than a proposed drive-through in that motorists cannot come up to place an order, wait on their food. It's very much more efficient than a standard drive-through. We will also be requesting a special use for a small outdoor dining area on the front patio. And then I guess I'll open it to any questions, given that much of the information I've presented at last month's meeting.
Explain the drive-through again. You don't order at a kiosk and then pull up?
Correct. You must order online. You must pay through an app online.
Gotcha.
And then any motorist that comes in is strictly there to pick up food, which basically makes a Chipotle lane take 1/3 the time to process through than a traditional drive-through, be it a McDonald's or Burger King or whatnot. So all that goes to say is that the queuing concerns for a Chipotle as they install them now are greatly alleviated compared to something more traditional.
Questions, comments from the board? Mr. Huss, how many variances will you be before the BZA?
We have one special exception for the technical drive-through lane. We have the use variance, and then we have 20 total variances we are requesting that we've been coordinating with staff. We have 8 bulk general variances, 9 related to landscaping, 2 relating to signage, and 1 other. I would stress that the landscaping, in particular, a lot of those variances are predicated on the site acreage. The 41 overlay district is kind of targeted to a much larger property, and a lot of them just the site acreage isn't quite compatible with US 41. I do believe we have, especially we've met parking, and I believe the town will find that we've put great effort into beautifying the site as much as possible given the area we have to work with.
And Corey, and based on your other restaurants, is 7 a good number? Sometimes I've seen Dairy Queen in town, and it's very difficult if the queuing is outside the lane for people to back up and pull in. And I just want to make sure, with this site plan being the size it is, that 7 cars is,
Yeah, it's Corey Dedamore, CLD Holdings.
Yeah.
So inside of the actual space, Chipotle has a designated area that has all of their service stations for just like a person will be making that food to just go and out that window. And also all of these are app-based.
towards the microphone. Corey, I'm sorry.
Yeah, they're app-based orders. So it's like you referenced Dairy Queen, and I go through it all the time with my children. We all have to wait, order, then wait for the food to be processed. This is all just handing, it's already completed. Here you go. They just have to show something on their phone that was their order and it's sent out. So there's no order and then wait for it to be made. It's already processed and they're out the window.
Gotcha. And then one other question is, I can't read all these lines. Northbound 41, it's 2 lanes with a left turn lane. Is there any way to get a decel? Or is that, there's no room for, I'm just afraid people turning, if you're heading northbound on 41, you're taking a right in, you're really, trying to avoid queuing up traffic. That's why 41 went through the large improvements that they did.
Yeah, I mean, 41 is unique, and I can speak to this because I do have a pretty substantial transportation background. If we were in a vacuum on Route 30, it would be an incredibly valid point. Just the frequency of drive-throughs, the decel lane rules on 41 have just kind of been thrown out the window, not just for this development, but even the ones north and south, and probably dozens more along 41. It would be a cascade down effect, work in front of and probably on the right-of-way of properties that my client does not own, and also eat into the ability to beautify the front of the parking area.
That's why I also aligned the entrance. It's moving it from the south there to the north to try to alleviate if there was ever an intersection that was created, so it would be already kind of ahead of that. No.
You're having dine-in, you're having in the store dine-in, so you won't just have drive-up.
No, that's just for online ordering pickup, and they've classified it as their Chipotle lane. No, but there is all indoor dining. And if you have, one of the most recent ones built the same building, maybe a little bit amplified architectural on ours compared to Dyer's new location where it's all inside dining, and Crown Point just has a new concept as well.
Any other questions?
Just preparing for Monday, generally speaking, what variances again? I know you said landscaping, the outdoor seating, the drive-through, what else?
Certainly. So some of the bulk variances are just the site acreage is substandard per the code. The orientation of the site is opposite what the overlay district requires. US 41 requires parking exclusively in the rear. Given the dimensions of the site, some of our setbacks are insufficient in the rear, considering it's of residential use but commercial zoning. Parcel width is insufficient per the code. Getting back to site acreage again, the gross floor area requirements of the 41 district could not be met. We would probably have the ability to only have 5 parking spots and an enormous Chipotle. The parcel density is very close to the ordinance, but it is over. And then, I'm sorry, I didn't know if you wanted me to enumerate every one of them.
No, just
but,
generally, like, yeah.
The landscaping variances are numerous, but again, they're predicated that we're working with a very small area, so that just trips into a handful. And then we do have some very, very, very modest signage requests. We are 4% over the 100 square feet. So we thought that would, given that that's Chipotle's standard preferred signage and we're over by such a sliver, we are requesting a variance on that. So
Thank you.
How many customers do you expect a day here?
Because I'm not involved with, corporate Chipotle is in operations. I mean, I'm more of the developer landlord of it.
Okay.
It's something I could bring for that next meeting from them. You know, I wouldn't be able to tell you offhand.
And why I ask is, I agree with John with the DXL lane. Yeah, I know there's not a lot of room between where your property is and the south end of the property and the entrance, but it does help so that cars don't have to come to a complete stop and wait for that person to turn into the entrance.
Because the length is based on speed limit, and I don't know what 41, I don't obey the speed limit on 41. Hopefully Chief Flores didn't hear that. So the decel lane will be based on speed limit, so if it's 40, 45, you gotta take it so many feet, but
Yeah.
anything, it's NDOT. you know,
Well, and I guess the
anything that's-
property here, this is right away to the south, and it looks like there's no entrance till you get to
For 95th.
where we're almost to the bottom of the page, so
They don't have a diesel lane either.
they don't either.
no.
That's the J&M Golf Shop. They don't have a
Yeah.
diesel lane either to get in there.
Yeah, and that was then, and this is now, right? So,
Do we know how far NDOT would require you to take it south, the decel lane? Have you, did you guys look at that, or just based
It
on?
would certainly extend well beyond the frontage of this property.
Okay.
that's all I have.
Anybody? All right, well, I know you got BZA on Monday. We'll figure out how the site plan changes by then.
I think we're pretty locked in, but, yeah.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have, what do I have here? Suncrest Church. This is a proposed amendment to the Gates PUD to allow a second church, place of worship, and 2 proposed commercial buildings within portion of pods 3, 7, and 17. Mr. Reddick, how are you, sir?
Doing fine, thank you. Doug Reddick with DVG. I'd like to respectfully ask to be put at the end of the agenda. Brad is here, Jamie Ward is here, but their legal counsel is on his way here from another meeting, so we'd rather wait for him. If you don't mind, can we go to the end of the agenda?
Everyone good? Everyone good? All right,
Thank you.
very good. Next on the agenda, we have Calistoga, a proposed concept plan, a PUD located at the southeast corner of Park Place and US Highway 231. Mr. Slager, good evening.
Good evening, Jack Slager with Schilling Development, representing the developers of Calistoga. Last month, Kevin Hunt from our office was here to give you a first look at this project, and we were able to listen to some of the feedback. I'm trying to find my notes here. So we have the next two projects on the agenda, and they're similar. And so I wanted to talk about the projects in a general term. Both of these projects will require annexation, and so we're looking to do a PUD zoning as part of our annexation agreement for these parcels, both Calistoga and the next one, Stone Creek. So before I go into the specifics of each site, I wanted to talk about the products that we're seeking to build there. And there was some question at the last meeting as to whether there is demand for this type of product, if it's wanted or needed in the town. I did pass along some various data and information through Jenna, and I'm assuming it got passed along. So I don't know if you've had time to look at all of that, but just to go over a couple of them. There was an article just last week in the Northwest Indiana Times by the National Association of Realtors. A couple of the quotes on there: 56% of people said they would prefer a house with a small yard, be able to walk to places, versus 44% who would prefer a large yard. 53% would prefer an attached dwelling and be able to walk to shops, restaurants, short commute. So that was the last week's Times article. We had the ARP brochure, AARP brochure, if you were able to look at that. Talks about by the year 2030, more than 1 in 5 people in the United States will be age 65 or older. Among people age 65 or older, 86% said they wanted to remain in their current community. But most homes in the United States are not designed for aging in place. So we're marketing to the aging population. We had a page out of your 2017 comprehensive plan. This is the town's comp plan that was put together by your consultants, and it's also been referenced in the latest study that you're having done. But in 2017, it said, under the zoning and future zoning and annexation areas, residential uses should provide a mix of housing types and styles to support the growing population of the town. And then also out of the corridor study, which this is just very recent. This came out, I think, last week, and maybe it's still in draft plan stage. This was the corridor study done by your consultant for Calumet Avenue and 109th through town. Very interesting. I've read through it. A lot of good information in there. So 97.7% of the village's housing stock is single-family housing. Many housing markets are seeing diversification of housing, and the market potential may be in place to add different forms of housing. And then a page off the stakeholder interviews, opportunities for St. John, trend towards smaller homes, varied housing products. And then lastly, this was another study that the town had commissioned back in 2017. This was a Metro Study Opportunity Analysis. Again, most of the senior population growth will be the result of migration, not be the result of migration into the area, but will be from aging in place. St. John has an excellent opportunity as an upscale municipality to provide senior housing for its aging higher income earning population, allowing them to stay connected to friends and family in a low-maintenance living environment. So wanted to provide some of that background. You had asked about the product type. So to go into the specifics of the site, this site is
let me get it in front of me because I can't see that screen. 173 acres. Obviously, it has some commercial frontage on US 231. That small portion is already in the town and is zoned commercial and falls in your US 231 overlay district. We're proposing a connection to Park Place, right where the cursor is. That is the entrance to Mill Creek, across from the main entrance to the gates. We'll create a frontage road of sorts behind the commercial that will allow access into those commercial parcels. We show 2 right-in, right-outs on 231 that would be shared, and we would show that road extending further as the rest of the commercial properties develop along 231. As you come into the development, we're showing a portion of maintenance-free single-family lots and a portion of maintenance-free paired villas. And then the back of the site would be 221 units of traditional single-family 80 by 150. There would be a future main entrance on Klein Avenue. And we are proposing a road stub to the south for future development. That's all open field to the south, and also a road stub to the west for future extension. And all utilities would be stubbed to those road ends. Some of the additions since last month, we've added a park in the center of the development, right there, centrally located park. There was some ask about that last time, so we thought that would be a good idea here. We looked at where the nearest park property is, and so we would like to put one in there. We also added a paved walking path that goes along it might be hard to see, there it is, yep, along the east boundary, goes up, and then it comes back across, and it ties back in all the way over to Park Place. So it gives a little bit of access through the site, and a nice paved path that will kind of wind along the berm there. Let's see what else I had. So there's now a total of 382 units on 173 acres for a density of 2.2 units per acre, which is comparable to many of our single-family developments. Again, this will require the PUD zoning. Lastly, and we may have mentioned this last month, but we are exploring the residential TIF. That is something that would essentially be a partnership with us in the town. This is a relatively new concept that's come about as of July 1st of this year. If the town would entertain working with us to create a specific residential TIF for this site, by our calculations, it would look to generate about $30 to $35 million in TIF revenue for this particular site. Those things over 20 years, those funds could be used for any improvements generally in the area. You could look to leverage that into improvements to Klein Avenue. It could be used for the traffic light that's needed at Park Place. It could be used for sewer and water infrastructure. It could even be used for police and fire upgrades. And so there's a lot of great opportunities there. So that is... that's what I have on this. Like I said, we've made a few additions to the site, but wanted to just entertain some reaction back from you and get some input on the site itself.
Sergio, real quick, to the west is Mill Creek, correct? What is that zoning? Is that R2?
It's PUD.
That's a PUD too?
Mm-hmm.
Mill Creek is a combination of different size single-family lots and duplexes.
Okay. And is there a way, just for us to have a quantitative perspective, the PUD is 382, if this was strictly came in R1 like it would in an annexation, can you just give us that number? So
Yeah.
that we would see where it is variance to the 382 number?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we might
Yeah,
think it's
so-
100 lots. Or
Yeah, R1, as you know, R1 is 100 by 200 foot lots. These are, even the single family here are 80 by 150. From our experience with R1 lots,
when we're in R1, we're getting about 1 per acre. If we look at like a Continental or a Rosewood or a Wellington, many of the R1 developments that we've done, you're right around 1 an acre. When you get into an R2 development, you're usually right around 2 an acre. And that would be more like the 80 by 150 lots. You're right around 2 an acre, 2.0. Mill Creek, I've actually done the math on the adjoining developments. Mill Creek has a density of 2.25 right next to us. We're proposing a density of 2.2 on this site. So, we're trying to preserve a little bit of the open space. We've got some commercial up front, and just come up with a little bit more of a creative plan than the grid that you're seeing on some of the other developments. And you heard the data that I provided earlier, just saying that we're finding that when you have a site of this size, a mix of housing is a better blend for a site that is so large. We're not at all opposed to R1 developments, but for us, they generally work better on small sites. Again, the Wellington, the Rosewood, Continental.
So based on the calculations you gave us, so if it's 173 acres, for R1, you're looking at potentially 173 lots.
If it were R1.
If it was
That's
R1.
correct.
R2 would be 350.
Yeah, about 30 less, yep.
Okay. Questions, comments?
I got one question.
Go ahead, Bob.
Are we going to have a lift station in a development like this, Jack?
No, there's actually there's a 12-inch sanitary main that's comes under 231 that serves Mill Creek, and it comes into this property pretty deep, and we'll continue it through the site, and it actually can keep going for a while, so it works out well.
Could you have a display like this with R1 lots for us to look at? Yeah, I'm assuming that you're already looked at it, or you probably put it into, but then, okay, these are two questions. Okay. Something R1 lots like this, then a little bit of your mixture of R1 and R2s, then come up with how much water usage are you going to have between R1 and R2s, and although you're claiming that, I did population projection figures with a census for so many years, that we're having people from other areas coming to St. John, but they're not what I see as aged individuals, okay? But I see them as young individuals too, because they like St. John, but at the same time, they're looking at it for growth for their kids and so forth. So that's why I would like to see something like this, if you wouldn't mind. But, and at the same time, then we could actually start to have a little bit more talk, because there's a lot of strain that goes into the town. And I'm not preaching. I love the growth, okay?
Yeah.
But when there's so much strain all at once, with so many residentials, there's water usage, there's police and fire protection, but now you're asking the town to pitch in. What can the developer do for the town that says, okay, yes, I am part of the town, I will make sure that we have consistency in our growth?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so there's a lot of points you made there. You're talking about, you're seeing a lot of the young families moving in, and I think it's based on the housing products that the town offers right now, which is primarily single-family homes. We're asking for a different product type here, may be more attractive to an aging population, and also the data that I provided shows that there are people that live in this town already that want to stay in this town and want to age into this town, want to move out of their two-story home, big yard, and into something smaller, maintenance-free. As far as the strain on the utilities, and we have talked about this before, so this would be a 6 to 10 year development project. We're we're not the national builders, we're not D.R. Horton or Lennar, we don't come in and put in 300 homes a year. We're 6 to 10 years on development, probably a 15-year build-out. And during that time, obviously, the town has the ability to grow and grow their utilities. You're already proactively working on your wells and your water system and your sewer systems. But that is also where the potential for this TIF, residential TIF, could come into play, where there could be $20 to $30 million available through just this development to help with all those things, with the improvements to all the utilities in town. And then to go back to your first point about, would we lay this out as R1? We would not develop this parcel as R1. Again, we're not opposed to R1 development. There's a time and a place for R1. I think we've done most of the large R1 developments in town: Rosewood, Wellington, Cardinal Cove, Continental. Each of those was a specific site that had rolling hills and trees and ponds and things that made it appealing to a 100 by 200 foot lot that we could market. And that's definitely a slower market due to the price of the lots and then ultimately the price of the homes. You financially, you cannot do an R1 development on 173 acres. It just doesn't math out. It won't
Can
work.
you have a mixture, though? Like I said, one is a mixture of both, and
Well, that's what we're proposing, a mixture of single family,
no,
maintenance free.
R1 and R2s.
Yeah, we wouldn't do it. It wouldn't.
Wouldn't,
It
so you
wouldn't.
would just scratch that out?
No.
You wouldn't develop then?
We would not. It's
So,
not
two
financially
combination.
feasible.
All right, then, thank you.
I have a question. So you quoted the comprehensive plan of 2017 to essentially indicate that the comp plan indicated that we do have, I guess, a growing need for housing for the aging community. And I guess my question would be, since 2017, is there any data that would indicate how many homes, maintenance-free, just like what Jack is presenting, have we actually built since 2017? And is there a need for more? Do we have any data as to that, Sergio?
We do.
Okay.
I don't know it right now. We do have that data that shows the population change on the different cohorts for the age over the last 10 years, as well as the types of housing based on the permits that were issued that support that type of housing.
Yeah, because I guess it would make sense to me to know that information, because if we're saying that in 2017, it was determined that we had a need for this, well, what have we done since 2017? We are now in 2023. Do we still have that need? And how many homes have been built that are maintenance-free, like what you're proposing here? And do we want more as a community?
Sure. Yeah, and obviously, you've had some growth in that area. We've been a part of some of that. The Greystone development is a good example, where we did a nice mix of single-family, maintenance-free cottage homes and maintenance-free paired villas, and it was very successful. And so there has been some more of that. Now, the market analysis, this came off of your St. John Corridors plan, which, again, is a week old, and it says 97.7% of your housing stock is single-family housing. Now, that doesn't say what is maintenance-free and what's not maintenance-free, but we feel the market is still there. And, we're not proposing the majority of the site be that, but some portion of it be that, so that we can have a mix of housing for this development.
Jack, if this site went as is, do you believe that a traffic light would be required at 109th and Park Place?
I believe it's required now. I believe whether this site goes in or doesn't go in, I believe it should have been done 5 years ago.
But Jack, that's the state, right? That's not the town's.
State Road 230.
Well, it is the state road, but the town obviously has some say in what happens there. As we all know, Parrish in 231 is going to get a roundabout. Klein in 231 is going to get a roundabout. Once those two roundabouts go in, you will have an uninterrupted flow of east-west traffic. We just went through this in Winfield. Winfield is putting roundabouts all up and down 109th, and it creates new problems for the areas in between the roundabouts. being that there's no break ever because there's no light at either end, there's never a break in the traffic. So it will be even more difficult to get out of Park Place once those roundabouts go in. So that intersection needs a roundabout or a traffic light sooner than later.
Jack, I'm sure you read the minutes. You know I'm concerned with lot width. I'm always concerned with lot width.
Sure.
60-foot wide lots, you got 85 of them. 90, 90-foot lots. Yeah, that's tolerable. The 221 lots. Paired villas, that's a 90-foot wide lot, but there's two units on the lot.
Right.
So basically, you got a 45-foot lot. The polling that the Times did, that's the big question is who'd they poll?
Sure.
Right? And who'd they poll? Where do the people live? How old are they? Are they, elderly or, young families?
Yeah.
The second thing is the single family, 97% single family homes. Seemed like a couple, 2-3 years ago on the board hearing like 30%, like it's around 70% of single family homes with 30% with condo, however you want to say, condos or paired villas, or I was thinking it was more 70-30.
Yeah.
Not 97%.
Yeah, I don't know where they came up with the 97.7%. That seems a little high.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you talk about single-family versus multifamily, multifamily realistically is townhomes, apartments, and condos. I would buy that we have less than 3% of those. So they might be qualifying everything else as single-family, which in effect it is. It's low. We're talking low density here. We're talking 2 to 2.2 units per acre. Historically, that's very low density. I had looked at some of the older subdivisions in town. Shilton Hills was one that we did 20 years ago, and I believe that was an R1 development at its time. Has a density of 1.75. Renaissance has a density of 1.84. Mill Creek 2.25. Silverleaf 3.0. Some of the stuff that you're seeing now in Gates East is 4 to 6 units per acre they're putting in over there. So we're talking about 2 to 2.2 units per acre. This is not a dense development.
And I guess my third statement would be, yes, the elderly are looking for, downsize and smaller lot widths or smaller lots and, the paired villa type things. Once they're gone, what do we have? Once that population has gone and passed away, 20, 30 years from now,
Sure. Well,
what is St. John going to have
Yeah.
with these units?
Yeah, and I appreciate that as a St. John resident myself. And I will say one thing that we bring to the table is a higher quality of construction. We don't even build any of the houses, but we demand it from our builders. We set the covenants higher. We set them higher than the town minimums. The quality is better. The landscaping requirements are better. We set up strong HOAs for all of these developments so that the requirements are followed. And so we bring more to the table. I want to be careful that we don't assume that just because somebody proposes a larger lot means that it's going to be a higher value home. What ends up happening is if we force a developer into oversized lots, they end up cutting back on the quality and or the size of the home to compensate for hitting that price point that they want to hit. We really don't worry about that because we're not building the units. We're working with the builders, and we're just going to require high quality, high architectural standards, variation, multiple builders bringing in variation like you're seeing in the preserve. So I think that's something that we do that's a little different than some of the other developers in town.
Any other questions before we move on to Stone Creek? All right, next on the agenda, we have item G. This is Stone Creek, proposed concept plan, PUD located approximately 700 feet north of the northwest corner of Parrish Avenue and US Highway 231.
Okay, Jack Slager again with Schilling Development to talk about Stone Creek, lying on the west side of Parrish Avenue, south of the power lines and north of 231. Again, this is a 173-acre site. Backs up to the railroad, high power lines. We are showing an extensive landscape buffer along Parrish Avenue. We've also included now a berm and a paved path that runs the entire length of the property along Parrish Avenue. That would be in lieu of the required sidewalk along Parrish Avenue, but we would like to put a paved path that runs all the way from north to south. We've eliminated a cul-de-sac at the north end that was shown last time. It opens up more green space. We also show a road stub and we kind of sketched in some future lots on the small, not included parcel that's right in the middle of the site on Parrish Avenue. There was some concern last time, like, how is that hole going to fit in later if someday that house sells? So we can put a road to it that shows future lots that would fit there. That way, we're not left with a hole in the site later. We also included a new paved path that runs east-west along the north side of the site underneath the power line easement. This could potentially tie in with what the development across Parrish, I believe it's Astoria. Diamond Peak is putting in a development now across the street. They have a section of east-west bike path that really goes nowhere, but this could link those two sites together. Ultimately, we'd love to see this path continue up Parrish to the new Founders Park that's just north of here. We show a road stub to the north that will tie in with, ultimately with Three Springs. We show a road stub to the south to the undeveloped land. And just all the same things that we talked about on the last site. We're looking for a nice mix of units, majority being single-family, but a section of maintenance-free, and a section of maintenance-free paired villas. This one ends up with a density of 2.1.
Questions or comments?
Basically, the same comments from me.
The same here. I have a question, where's the park in here?
We did not put a park in this development. You guys have a brand-new park that's about a quarter-mile north on Parrish. Is that called Founders Park?
Founders
Park, yeah. So we're showing the path all along Parrish. You know, one of the things that I mentioned in some of these earlier findings is that people are wanting to walk someplace fairly close rather than drive in these communities. Both of these sites are adjacent to commercial, future commercial, and growing commercial. You had Jeff Branton here earlier tonight. They're putting a new commercial building right across Parrish here. So we have the opportunity to have this paved path along Parrish. I applaud you guys for pushing for sidewalks along Parrish. For, you know, all this stuff is going to interconnect. These people are going to want to walk down the street to go to whatever's going to be in his little strip mall and some of the other sites. Same thing with the previous site we talked about. You're going to see the commercial development along 231. If the homeowners that live there can walk or bike to the commercial, it's going to be a good thing.
I guess one of my comments, or maybe two of them, is, okay, the density that you're providing, what are you going to give to the town? And maybe one of them is improve Parrish Avenue with curb and gutter. Because right now it doesn't have curb and gutter,
Yeah,
correct?
and that's required by your ordinance. Parrish is one of the newer roads in town, was improved 2-3 years ago. Actually, both of our entrances, as shown, were installed at that time when we we had to dedicate the right-of-way for the widening of Parish, we traded for the entrances to be put in at that point. So the entrances are there. You're going to require me to do curb and gutter along Parish. That's fine. We're going to add the path in lieu of a sidewalk. Instead of a 5 or an 8-foot sidewalk, we'd like to do a 10-foot paved path. This will be similar to the preserve. It'll kind of wind through the berm. It'll look really nice. And again, if the town is open to residential TIF, there's another $25 to $30 million on this site. I mean, those dollars could be leveraged. There so many things. I mean, that could go a long way in this town. We talk about, as you look at, again, the corridor study, you talk about the railroad, the 2 railroad underpasses on 231. Obviously, if there's that kind of money generated from these sites, we want to see it used in the area of the properties. It doesn't have to be used on our site, but near our site. Those railroad underpasses, they've been talked about in several of your plans. Ultimately, they need to be widened for 231 to be proper through that area, and it's going to be millions and millions of dollars. This is an opportunity to generate some of those dollars. You guys want to do Klein Avenue someday. You want to put Klein Avenue through. I believe that was $20 million. There's some opportunities here, so those are some of the things that we can bring to the table.
How about a bike path across the railroad tracks? Is that, you know, act of God to have that done, or is that something?
I would say we would love to see that, and I show the bike path following the power line easement, and I'm sure you know, ultimately, once you get on the other side of 41, it's the same power line easement and the same bike path. So we'd love to see that happen. I brought it to that corner with the hope that someday it could go over or under or something.
No, I'm saying Schilling Development, put it in now, put it across.
That might be an act of God, yeah. If it could happen, we would encourage that, and again, maybe that's a spot for some TIF dollars. It would be.
I see a path now, and maybe that's, the farmer uses that
Yes.
that crosses over.
Yes,
you
that's
know.
correct. That's a farm crossing.
And, you know, there or along the power lines, or,
I don't know that I would want to see an at-grade crossing. I don't know how I feel about having a bike path at-grade crossing.
yeah, I don't either.
I don't know. I'd probably rather see a overpass or an underpass.
Jack, there's also a water main in there that we are looking to connect as well. I'm sure you're aware of that. That would connect the wells in 41 and loop it over to the east side of town, and
That'd be great, yeah. We know that your force main goes through this same area from.
and there's casings right in that area.
Yeah,
waiting for water.
we actually had the town put an extra casing in when they were doing it so that we could loop some of that stuff. We knew this was coming someday, so.
So talking about utilities, water and sewer are already there, or would need to be extended to this point?
Sanitary and storm would have to be extended out there, and water, but there's a water main that we want to put a 12-inch through that development. I'm sure Jack's aware of it, yes.
Yeah, we'll get it there. Yeah, those, we've got the 30-inch sanitary sewer, the East Side Interceptor is
Right.
a block away, and there's also 12-inch sanitary in the gates. There's all kinds of utilities in this area. Again, no lift station needed, but we would loop everything and provide for future extensions. Obviously, we own the property on the other side of the track, so we're wanting to get everything over there too.
In the property of the South Sergio, I know it's 2 barns, or is it growing? Growing, is that commercial or is that residential as well? What's that?
Residential.
It's residential, okay. All right, questions, comments?
The only other thing I would say is that I think Bob raised a really good point as far as the article that you referenced in your supporting documents, just to say, where are these folks that participated in this poll live currently? Is St. John a possibility for them? I mean, are we having people that don't even live in this community voting
Yeah, sure.
as to what they want? So I don't know that necessarily the Northwest Indiana article is indicative of what needs to happen here.
Sure.
But I appreciate the fact that you brought it before us. And just the density is always going to be a problem. I think that there are more than one person on this board that will share those comments or those concerns, I should say, but it is a problem. I think it's very dense. There's a lot of homes in there, and I get it. Obviously, from a development standpoint, you want to put as many homes as you can in there, but are we losing our, I guess, I don't want to use the word essence, but I'll use it anyways. As a community, I think St. John is known for having the big lots. We're not like Crown Point, we're not like Dyer. You can stick your hand out the window and you won't touch the neighbor, right?
Sure.
By doing what we're doing and moving in this direction, are we losing what makes us unique? And that's something that I think we need to consider as a board. Is there a possibility that perhaps you can have this mix, the mix housing, thank you, Bob, thank you. But perhaps minimize the density.
Sure.
I mean, that I think would be a compromise to some of the concerns that have been expressed today.
Yeah, and I support R1 zoning, and there, again, there's a time and a place for it. We actually have 2 more sites in town that we are planning that will be straight R1 zoning, so we won't even have to have that discussion. But each site is unique, and we have to look at each site and decide what is the best product for that site. We have challenges here. We have railroad tracks, we have high power lines, we have traffic. It's a flat cornfield. There really isn't a lot of appeal to it. We'll shape it. We're going to add trees. We're going to add landscaping. But, you know, if you've been paying attention to, say, the Continental, the sales pace of lots at that level is 4 a year. And that's what we expect it to be. But when you have a 173-acre flat cornfield, it just doesn't math out. You can't do it. So, we'll take all this back. We'll take your comments back again. We'll digest that, go back to the drawing board, and see what we can come up with.
Keep in
Yeah, and
mind,
Jack, I'm not saying R1 at all by any means, but I just don't want St. John to lose its identity too.
Yeah.
Just.
Identity's a better word.
Yeah,
Thank you,
that's-
thank you.
And keep in mind, we're like, I think we're all in agreement. Can we work something out here, like I said, a mixture, you know? So, and I know it's tough for the developer or the builders or anyone out there that's trying to sell something that's natural.
Yeah.
Flat, okay, in this case. But, you know, this is one of the identities that wherever I go, I was in Chicago, all the way to Lake Geneva, and they say, oh, our one lots, those are the best. And these are people that are retired that they're saying that. So I'm not going to take there are 4 people that said that. So there's a little bit of identity that we have, but it also creates a greater value added to the community. Not to say that you don't have it.
Yeah.
Okay, we're working here together
Yeah.
to make sure that it happens, so we have a good sustainability.
Excellent. Thank you for your feedback tonight.
Thank you.
Questions, comments? All right, Mr. Slager, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, well, do we want to go to Suncrest? We'll go to Suncrest now. You guys are good? All right.
Make them wait.
No, we will go.
Might get struck down.
Okay.
We'll go to item E, Suncrest Church. This is a proposed amendment to Gates PUD to allow a second church place of worship and second proposed commercial building. Mr. Reddick, good evening again.
Good evening, Doug Reddick with DVG. I have the whole crew here tonight. We have Pastor Jamie Ward from Suncrest Church. We have Nathan Viss, the legal counsel, as well as Brad Lambert, who's done obviously local development in this town, who's also an agent for the development as well. The plan is to relocate the existing Suncrest Church, and I'm going to let Jamie speak to any of that if you have questions about that. But this is a concept plan that was prepared, and I think it was presented, was it just last month? 2 months? 2 months ago. And I wasn't part of that, so I'm kind of new to the team as well. But overall, it hasn't changed a whole lot. We reconfigured, what we primarily did is we reconfigured the access off of Route 231. We were thinking about a main entrance into the project, and got some feedback on that, that maybe not be the best way to go. So what we're looking to do is use Park Place, which came up earlier tonight. We know there needs to be something like a stoplight or roundabout at Park Place. So we kind of redesigned things to get the main traffic, the main feed out to Park Place to the future stoplight. And then we're only showing right in and right out access to this development from 231. And that makes sense. We have a lot of people coming from the east, going to the church. They come into the east entrance. We also have a commercial component here. This will be basically a 2-lot subdivision. The church will be one, and then the commercial building will be a separate lot, I assume under separate ownership.
Correct.
Again, Nathan can speak more on that. But yeah, we wanted them to be cohabitate together, So if you got the donut shop for people after church, they want their donut, whatever. So we're proposing these right in, right out access points only to still feed all the major traffic out to Park Place. We're proposing some improvements to what we presented over there before, where we have maybe 2 lanes leaving the site onto Park Place to keep traffic moving. It's already a boulevard entrance there, so that's a good thing. And then the commercial component, has its kind of a separate access point, which is kind of necessary too. We've already talked to NDOT about this. They're comfortable with what we're proposing here as far as the entrances and the spacing between the entrances and the right in, right out. We just got an email saying that they don't really oppose a plan like this. If you have any more specific questions, the team will be glad to address those. But that's it in a nutshell.
Questions, comments from the board?
Me personally, I would probably cheat that entrance and turn left. Sometimes I do on 41 with the pork chop there by south of Strax.
Put ballards up for you?
Spikes or chains. But the pastor probably would kick me out of church, he saw me turning left, but I would not want to see entrances there. 231's just getting more and more with traffic, and that's my 2 cents, but.
So Sergio, remind me, this would be a recommendation from the Plan Commission due to the fact that this was an agreement between the developer and the council? Is that correct?
No,
With the amendment for only one church being allowed on the property?
no, I think we reviewed that, but I believe that falls outside of the legal description of what's identified or permitted from that type of land use.
Okay, I just wanted to verify. Okay.
But it would be, as part of a rezone, a recommendation from the Plan Commission to the council, any rezone.
I thought the PUD had to be amended to allow for a second
I thought they were
church.
gonna go for a straight distance.
Mr. Viss, if you could
Chairman.
introduce yourself for the record, please, sir.
Yes, Nathan Viss on behalf of the petitioner Suncrest Church. That's a good question that you do raise. What would need to be amended is going to be the ordinance that was passed by the town council in 2004. That ordinance restricted only one church to be allowed in the entire approximately 800 acres, so that would need to be allowed. That would be in conjunction then, what we'd be seeking from the Plan Commission would be favorable recommendation for a zone change is what we are looking for here. There's a lot of moving parts. We had a great meeting with town staff as well as your legal team on this matter about a month and a half ago, and I think we came up with an appropriate plan to address that particular question that you raise. Another issue that has come up, kind of an opportunity area for resolution. If you take a look at this, this proposed development encompasses on the upper right-hand side Pod 7, which is part of the initial annexation in 2004. Near the roadway is Pod 3, and then in the upper left near Unit 17B is a small portion of Pod 17, I believe, if I'm recalling correctly. And one of the questions that has come up is if we extract or carve those out of the initial pods, what does that do to some density agreements that were reached with the initial developer in 2004? What does that do to some recapture agreements? and we're probably all familiar with some disputes that have arisen over the course of the past 2 decades over this whole 800-acre development. And one of the things that we've agreed upon with staff and legal team is to come to an agreement with the developer, with the town, and with Suncrest that indicates, A, this is the proposed development, and B, this is going to be the carve-out that's going to be happening to the annexation agreement and to the ordinance that was passed in 2004. And that C, the developer is not going to try or attempt to use that information for any additional advantage beyond the agreement that was reached between the developer and the town approximately 2 years ago. So we've crafted that proposed agreement that's recently been put in the hands of your attorney. It's a rather lengthy agreement, as we're dealing with probably about 40 pages of an annexation agreement and an ordinance. So certainly appreciate that Mr. Decker needs some time to evaluate that, and we look forward to continued dialogue to ensure that the town is in a safe position, Suncrest is in a good position, and we're not going to face any hiccups down the road pending formal approval.
And has this discussion, I know you said you had it with staff, legal, has this discussion happened with the developer?
We're broaching it, yep. We're not anticipating, this has been a dialogue that we've had dating back to when the property was purchased. At that point in time, there was extensive discussions that the plan was to hopefully be able to put a church at this particular location.
Because the developer sold them this lot with the understanding of '04 that only one church can be on this development.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So I think what probably happened there, and again, I wasn't part of that conversation, others in this room weren't, but probably that one church per the 800 acres was probably forgotten about at the time that sale occurred.
And I'm just reading the agenda. It said 2 proposed commercial buildings. I see lot 2 having one. Has something,
Yeah, that was the original.
okay. Just want to make sure. So then, just so I'm getting my bearings straight, 2 items would have to be a recommendation to a PUD change, correct? Am I doing that correctly? Recommendation to a PUD change would be first, or at the concurrent, then a recommendation to a zoning change for this parcel as well. Those would both then go to the town council for their consideration. Am I doing that correctly?
Well,
I'm trying to.
It's, when you say a PUD change, it's actually, I believe, a change to the
Development agreement.
annexation agreement and zoning commitments that were submitted by the original developer in 2004, which restricted the entire PUD to one church. And in my opinion, that can only be modified by the town council. I don't know that that necessarily requires any approval from the plan commission. I think it's certainly appropriate for the plan commission to consider it. The zone change does require consideration after a public hearing by the plan commission, making a recommendation to the town council. Town council ultimately has the final say on any change in the zone maps, and that's essentially what would be proposed with that change in the PUD zone map for this parcel.
In which order it goes, it doesn't, does it half a dozen the other?
Yeah, I don't
know
that I have an opinion about that necessarily. I think they go hand in hand. So.
Questions, comments? Mr. Viss, I will again state my case with, especially with the recent changes to residential TIF, making it more easier for a community. My concern is still, we are taking a area in our allocation area and providing it to a well-worthy cause. I understand you do have commercial on lot 2, but I need to know what the final impact could be potentially to the town if we're taking part of our allocation area to give it to a entity that would not help support that allocation area.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, that's a good question, and that was part of financials when we were last here 2 months ago, I believe. You weren't here, and I'm certainly happy to resubmit that, but we did take a look at a comparison as to what the revenue would be generated if it was residential versus what the proposed is that's up on the screen that's before you this evening. And the proposal to turn approximately 30% of this area into commercial development vastly outweighs what the residential generation of revenue was going to be, as well as the ongoing cost. If we were to put in those approximate 30 residences in that area, would also then encumber the town with. Perhaps Mr. Lambert, who is more of a numbers man than me, might be able to refresh my memory,
or
but
if
it
you
was
could
in the
just-
millions.
If you
I
could just
can resend
resend,
that.
if you,
I can resend it to
thank you.
Yeah.
I
Yep.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Yep. But no, absolutely, for the town's edification, we did prepare that, and that's all based upon recent commercial building structures within a 5-mile radius that we took a look at.
And those numbers that you gave in the past represent what we're seeing here now?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yes.
So this residential TIF district, that's something new that Jack brought up.
No, so it's been around for about 5 or 6 years, but.
But it's new to us hearing it, or new for me to hear it.
The state changed their regulation to
Yeah.
law July 1 to allow communities now to apply for, back in the day, it was used for, 5 years ago, for communities that had a hard time with housing stock. You had to meet a 1%. You couldn't develop housing more than 1% of what your current housing was. They took that away this year. So really opened it up for a lot of communities to now use tax increment financing to fund public safety, public infrastructure, and things like that.
But I
So-
guess what I'm saying is the document that you presented to us with the commercial compared to residential, did you include the residential as a TIF in your findings of your calculations?
We did not. We would have to go back for that particular
Okay.
new arena that's being opened up in the state of Indiana to see what the ramifications would be if we were to take those approximate 30 homes. My sense is that this commercial portion is still going to outweigh that, but I can certainly go back and reevaluate and get that
That would
submitted
probably
to the
be
board.
something we need to
Yep.
be presented with.
Very good. Questions, comments? This doesn't require a public hearing, or does it? Yes, would. Would it?
For a
Public hearing?
rezone, yes.
For the rezone it would, but
Yep.
for the,
Annexation.
for the development agreement?
No, it's the, right, so you're correct that the Plan Commission must conduct a public hearing on the application for a change in the zone maps of this PUD district. I don't believe a public hearing is required for the council to consider the amendment to the annexation agreement and zoning commitments that were originally proposed with the development.
Gotcha.
So, yes, there will be a hearing held by the Plan Commission,
But not for both? Well, just for the rezone?
just for the rezone.
Gotcha. All right. Questions, comments? All right.
Very good.
Everyone
We
have
will
a
get
great
this-
evening.
We'll get this prepared for a public hearing. Thank you.
Item H, amendments to subdivision control ordinance. And who read the 117 pages again? Come on, who read them? Who read them all?
3 times.
3 times.
3 times, John.
All right, so we will go to a public, do we have scheduled for a public hearing
No,
on?
we're looking to schedule, I mean, this is version 4. It was presented 2 times before in the same format. We have not received much feedback, if any feedback, from what we went through at one time, page by page. So we're just asking to get this set over for public hearing. However, there may be 1 or 2 items that need to be run by the Director of Public Works. He's asked some questions or asked us to modify something. So we just need to touch base with them real quick and confirm those minor changes. But we're asking to move this to public hearing for next month.
Okay. A lot of technical stuff. Is most of the department heads, or all of them have responded with comments and suggested changes?
Ideally,
You got a
it's
couple more?
Ones we're trying to get the information from, or what would help facilitate or support what the end game is through the subdivision ordinance or the public works.
Okay.
Very good. I'm working with stormwater as well.
So before I adjourn, I want everyone to say something nice about Sergio.
Sorry.
No, come on, I want to see him blush.
No.
No, all right. All right, thank you, everyone. Ready? All right, now we'll start talking crap once you turn off the mic. All right, we're adjourned.